Hello Horror Hounds, we've got a lot to rattle through today. 3 films, the 3 creature films, starting with Creature from the Black Lagoon, as requested by the Deadly Dames of Horror, Z Rysek, and one of my regular contributors who I'm going to pronounce as ElfLover04. It's all in text speak, not all the letters are there. So please, as I typed it out, I thought, oh, it could be El Flavor. I don't know if you're getting some Spanish Harlem vibe, but please forgive me if that's wrong. It's notes heavy because I can't keep all 3 films in my head, so forgive me for reading. But the first film kicking off, it gives me an excuse yet again to sing the praises of this amazing Universal Classic Monsters Blu-ray box set. 8 movies in here, including Creature from the Black Lagoon. The restoration on all of them is superb. And as an added bonus, Creature from the Black Lagoon is, as it was intended, in 3D. Any film that's going to start with the Big Bang, move on to the Earth being formed billions of years ago, then segue into the evolution of life in the oceans and then out onto the land, make its way up to modern day, where a sort of paleontological dig has unearthed a fossilized hand of a previously unknown species, with the camera to pan across it and have this fossilized claw literally come out of the screen at you. Any film that decides that that's how it's going to start is all right by me, Jack. The restoration job on the Blu-ray looks great. The film looks beautiful, but we have to acknowledge the technology at the time. The 3D cameras that they built purely to film this, one of them, a 3D camera they designed and built so that they could film underwater. The 3D is excellent. I love it. Okay, there are bits when the screen is filled with bubbles and there are times when it's hard to know what to focus on. But my God, the underwater photography in this is just astonishing. And to have at its heart the Gillman, late to the game for Universal, 1954. 1954, but still rightfully, I think, has his place amongst the pantheon of Universal's classic monsters. Not cribbed from literature like Dracula or Frankenstein or Phantom of the Opera or The Invisible Man. Not taken from history like The Mummy, but a purely original creation that happily stands shoulder to shoulder with those classic and legendary monsters. And the design of the Gillman is practically perfect. I could sit and watch the Gillman being photographed underwater in 3D all day long. In the first film, as with all 3, the Gillman is brought to you by 2 sets of actors. On land, in this film, it's Ben Chapman. And underwater, it's Rico Browning. He played the Gillman underwater in all 3 films. It would have been a crying shame if it was different actors underwater for him, because he gives the creature his own really distinct swimming style that just becomes a part of him. Some of you will have your favourite Jasons. Jason is typically, from the Friday the 13th films, played by a stuntman, and some of you will prefer the way Kane Hodder holds himself. Others will prefer the physicality of previous incarnations. With this, we have a consistency. If the Gillman had swum differently in the sequels, there would have been something off about it. So despite 3 different actors playing him on land, underwater he's graceful, deadly, and we have Rico Browning to thank for that. Especially in probably the most glorious scene out of all 3 movies, where he's swimming underwater below the woman, and there's that little, so they do a sort of ballet thing together, although she's unaware that she's participating in it. And the curiosity of the animal and the sort of the lure of the woman, she fascinates him somehow, all played out just with the way he swims. Recently on Jambo Shango's YouTube channel, he and Randy Mole, his mate, they're excellent YouTubers, by the way. Check them out, subscribe to them. They reviewed Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm going to have to echo some of their sentiments here. Like Randy, I am an enormous fan of Jaws. It's my favourite movie of all time. I think it's perfection. There are no flaws in Jaws. That rhyme just happened. And watching Creature from the Black Lagoon, as a Jaws fan, when you think you know everything there is to possibly know about Jaws, and you watch a film and go, my God, that's... Steven Spielberg must have seen Creature from the Black Lagoon. There are elements from Creature in the Black Lagoon that show up in Jaws. Most iconically, obviously, is the shot underwater looking up at the silhouette of the woman as she's swimming along the water. When the creature gets caught in the net, and the people on the Rita are struggling to haul it up, and the boom and the winch that it's on cracks and breaks, and then the net comes up and it's all torn to pieces. You can think of nothing but Matt Hooper trying to bring him up back onto the orca from the shark cage that he's in, and exactly the same thing happens, and the cage comes up and it's all torn to shit. There are even elements of the score. You can't get away from the fact that if you're filming anything underwater, it doesn't even have to be a creature feature, and the music slightly goes da 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 da. The first thing you think of is Jaws. That musical motif is in Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm not accusing John Williams of theft, because his score for Jaws is my favourite film score of all time. I think it's a work of utter perfection, but it's in. There's that little motif is in Creature from the Black Lagoon. Another Spielberg connection. Rewatching it again, it struck me. Now this is a little thing. I'm not making too much out of this, but it's fun and it's there. I think if you want to rewatch it, Jurassic Park. The first attack in the tent, where you just see the tent shaking and you can hear the creature inside but you don't see it, does kind of remind me of the very first raptor attack in Jurassic Park, where you can only hear the raptor and you can't see it. Antonio Moreno, who plays Carl Meyer in it, the guy that discovers the fossilized remains and then wants to put the expedition together to go back, there's a portion of the film where they dress him in a white shirt and white hat, which, when you see that, if you compare that, it's not exactly the same, but I think the way John Hammond is dressed in Jurassic Park calls back to the way Carl Meyer, the character, is dressed in Creature from the Black Lagoon. When they're travelling down the Amazon on the boat, the Rita, and they have a conversation about how they need money to fund their research, and how pure, research is beholden to money, unfortunately. And that's the conversation in the trailer between John Hammond and Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler about funding their digs for the future. On the same boat trip, you have characters literally saying that the Amazon as it is, I think it's the Devonian period they talk about, but say it's unchanged since the Devonian. Forgive me if that's the wrong period, and the creatures here haven't evolved since then. We're literally looking back in time. Personally, I can't help but think of the opening part of the tour, where they're looking at the foliage and stuff. Ellie's character is obsessed with the foliage, and they're talking about this. Nothing's changed here. Someone with some editing skills will be able to take those scenes from Creature from the Black Lagoon, and even there you've got your archetypes. There's an Alan Grant figure, Ellie Sattler, there's a John Hammond figure, and the guy who's sort of funding it is a sort of amalgam of Ian Malcolm and the lawyer character from Jurassic Park as well. There would be enormous fun to be had editing that with, I guess, stop motion footage from films like The Land That Time Forgot and stuff like that. And I think you could knock together a fairly convincing trailer for Jurassic Park if Jurassic Park had been made in the 50s. But overall, the original film, the first film, Creature from the Black Lagoon, is an absolute stone cold classic. It's a stunner and I love it. If you'll forgive me for the next two films, it will probably be more expedient if I read straight off my notes rather than try and wing it. So yeah, thrill to the action of a man reading off some paper. Revenge of the Creature, a year later, same director, Jack Arnold, came back in 3D again. I watched these two films on a rather nifty little Spanish DVD double, which at the time was the only place where I could reasonably get them. I think they're individually packaged now in English and separately, but these are the original films. It's just that you get the option to choose or not choose Spanish subtitles. The only gutting thing about this is that there is a rather thick and lush looking booklet that comes with this that I cannot read because it's all in Spanish, and what wonders are within, I will never know. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see Revenge of the Creature in 3D. Strange title. The creature doesn't really get its revenge on anyone, let alone humans, who are constantly harrying him in all of these films. If you just leave this poor bastard alone, everything will be fine and he'll be happy, rather than more and more miserable as the films go on. It's great to see Nestor Pavia back as Lucas, the captain of the Rita in the original, now captaining Rita 2. A nice, relaxed, funny, jovial character. It's very warming to have him back at the start with a different crew going down, and he knows exactly what's going on, and he's kind of laissez-faire about it. But this time they're convinced because they're scientists, they're prepared and they'll know what to do. Once they get the creature, quite quickly, which is fine, condense all of that down, there's no need to drag out retreading the first film. The creature falls into a coma all the way back to America, which I think is a little bit of a missed opportunity. They could have toyed a little bit. You know the section in Dracula where the Demeter, the ship, is coming to Whitby? They could have played with that a little. I'm not sure exactly how that would work, because if the creature wakes up, there's nothing. What's to stop him just jumping into the sea and sodding off? But he conveniently falls into a coma, only to be awakened in Florida. They bring him to a water park in Florida. Now, if Creature from the Black Lagoon makes you think of Jaws, there are sections of Revenge of the Creature that will make you think of Jaws 3D. Unfortunately, not getting to see it in 3D, that would have just added to it. It's set in a water park. They take him to a Florida water park and show him off as an attraction. When they get in there, they revive him by walking him around in a sort of wading pool to get the water over his gills to try and revive him, in exactly the same way that they did with the baby great white shark at the start of the film. The connections are slightly more tenuous, but you do wonder, just as I wondered whether Steven Spielberg saw Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, he must have. Whether whoever came up with the idea and wrote Jaws 3 saw Revenge of the Creature. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to argue that. The gill man is a proper animal in this movie. Once he's finally revived, the action is great. He's drowning people, he's getting out, escaping from the park, he's flipping over cars and shit like that. That's awesome, but brief. Seeing him trapped and chained and underwater is ridiculously sad, actually. It's full of pathos. The film kind of lulls during that section where they're trying to train him with Pavlovian responses, which is essentially boils down to electrocuting him with a cattle prod when he does stuff that they don't want him to do, whilst simultaneously saying no. There's a nice little reversal where he becomes fascinated with another woman, and once he's broken out, he finds his way to her beachfront property and watches her through her patio windows as she's getting ready to take a shower. It's a nice reversal of all the times where we saw people looking through the portholes at him while he was trapped in his display pool. They finally, in this film, managed to work out a gag that they wanted to have in the original movie. One of the crew of the Rita was supposed to be thrown towards, the creature was supposed to throw them towards the camera and utilise the 3D. They couldn't get the harnesses to work, so the creature just strangled him. But in this, you get the creature picking up a kid on the beach, throwing him about 20 feet, and he crashes against the palm tree. It's spectacular action. The musical sting for the creature in this film is used every single goddamn time he appears on screen. Enough already, we get it. Look, there's the gill man. Da-da-da! We don't need it every time. And the final shot of the movie is not a recreation of the final shot of the first film. It's the same footage. Lazy, lazy, lazy. But Revenge of the Creature, apart from a little lull and increasingly finding yourself on the Gillman's side rather than the human side, it's good fun. And on to 1 year later, 1956, The Creature Walks Among Us. Jack Arnold did not return to direct this. The two cardinal sins of this third film are that it is boring and it is depressing. The search for the creature, now amongst the Florida Everglades where he escaped to at the end of the second film, is interminably long and dull. It gives another excuse for a very attractive female lead to don a swimsuit, a bathing costume, and go swimming. But that's all there is to say for that. The film is 78 minutes long, and apart from a brief sort of underwater trudge where we see him occasionally, he doesn't attack and get captured until 36 minutes into the film. That's almost half the movie before we get to some creature action. That means, sadly, we have to spend the entire first half of the film in the company of Barton, who's running the expedition, who's a possessive, jealous and abusive husband. And lucky us, also along for the ride, is Jed Grant, Marcia Barton, well, her would-be rapist, not to put too fine a point on it. If left alone, there are two occasions where he would have assaulted her, and these people are scum. The humans in this movie, apart from Marcia Barton, really, are all pretty much scum. Hey, the psychologist guy's all right. Well, apart from the fact that he just sort of lounges around and allows spousal abuse to happen. Because heaven forbid you'd want to, I don't know, maybe say something. But you know, when it's the guy whose payroll you're on, that makes it really awkward, doesn't it? They're all fucking scumbags. When the creature does attack, it's superb. It's easily the best creature attack moment of all three films. Harpoons are going into him, he's flipping the boat over, he gets set on fire. Unfortunately, after that, he succumbs to his injuries, and it's all downhill here from the creature. His gills get fused together, so some nascent lungs that he's got start to develop. He becomes land breathing. They sort of turn him into a sort of simulacra of the Frankenstein monster. Suddenly he's huge and really broad and lumbering and wearing clothes and acting, like I say, more like the Frankenstein creature, but with less humanity, because he's not human. He's just, they cage him. He just looks at the water through the bars. He becomes almost literally a pathetic shell of himself. It's desperately sad to watch. The humans continue to be horrific people around him, you know, who eventually, sort of, some of them get their comeuppance in a really rushed ending that sees Gillman robbed completely of all of his agency as a character, and ends with him. It's desperately, I can't even bear to say it, lumbering towards the ocean, even though he's now a land breather and an air breather, and he knows it. We see It's suicide. The Creature Walks Among Us ends with the creature killing himself because it's. I don't think I will really ever put The Creature Walks Among Us on again. If you have any love for the Gillman as a character, it's. I know it's only a film, but it's actually quite hard to talk about. It's so depressing. It's so sad. And that's the end of The Creature. It's a sad, sad ending for a great, great character. But the first film's amazing. The second film is entertaining. And the third film is just wildly depressing. So there are 3 films left with 3 votes apiece. George Romero's Martin, which I have seen. As Above, So Below, which I have not seen. And from Japan, Hausu, which I have not seen, but am aware that it is mad as a bag of frogs. So once again, they go behind the old back. I can't talk and think at the same time, so please trust me when I say that this blabbering that I'm doing right now means that I cannot keep track of what boxes are in what hands. At the top is, okay, As Above, So Below. Parisian, I think, well, it's set in Paris. I think it's a found footage movie, so it's going to have to do some work to win me over if that's the case, but this has been recommended to me by a couple of people. So next up, As Above, So Below. Namaste.